Let us stand for our scripture reading. Coming from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 13. That's Deuteronomy 28, verse 13. And we will read in unison. And it reads, "And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath, if that thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day to observe and to do them." Amen. And we know the Lord will add a blessing to the reading and the hearing and the doing of his word. You may be seated.
Good morning and happy Sabbath. I'm really happy and thrilled to be back to Camden again. We've been in intense journeys. Last week I started my week in Atlanta, or nearby Atlanta, Colorado Springs. We had an evangelism training with It Is Written. Then as soon as I touched down at home, we had to go to Illinois, to 3ABN, for some family programs. And we are finally coming back and touching down. It is a blessing to be back in church. I was already blessed with many joys this morning. We had several intense things happening. The bulletin, unfortunately, there was a little problem. The file was not printing. And so even trying this morning, we couldn't. But I was blessed with a wonderful team. The media team had the cables I needed. And all my team was able to put up to it and be facing the service even without the information written. And I feel blessed for such a church that is ready to action, and I want to praise the Lord for that. We would like to start, as you know, with our children's story. And what do you see here? Two hands, yeah. What else? Say it again. A big hand and a little hand. What does it resemble to you? A father and a child, right? Okay. You know, children many times, they go with some kind of things with each other, and sometimes even in some competition. How tall are you? And they measure each other. Sometimes they measure height like this, not like this, right? To see if they can reach to a certain height. How tall are you? It's a typical question. I'm taller than you. Or another typical question is, how tall is your father? How big is your father? My father is this big. My kids were playing sometimes in Portugal when they were kids, and this young kid wanted to pass before them. And he said, my father is a police officer. Like, this is something you should be concerned about. You should yield before me. So I would like to start with this question. How tall is your father? Because sometimes it's a prospect of how tall you may be, or you may reach to that. And children, they have a certain fascination for giants, you know, big people. My kids sometimes they measure, oh, Daddy, when we came to this church, we couldn't touch here, now we can. It's like they are growing. I remember when I was a kid, I would see, when people dump dirt, and it's piled like this in a long thing. I imagine there's a giant buried there. It's big. Look at how big it is. Giants, they have a fascination for us. I would like to bring you to a nice trip to some modern giants that will make and bring more significance to this picture. In fact, this picture, it's not a father and a son. Those are two adults, a big one and a small one. And I want you to come to this trip, to this land of the giants. This is Sun Ming Ming, 7'9", 7 feet and 9 inches. Is like 2 meters and 40 if you are not like me as familiar with inches. Is from China, is a little bit younger than my wife, and is the tallest ever NBA player, professional player. Do you know that basketball players, and I'm not condoning or recommending, but I'm just relating, they are tall. So this is not just a young guy or a small guy. It's just that the other guy is really tall. These are two basketball players facing each other. That's how tall Sun Ming Ming is. His foot is size 20. It's just double my size. Okay? But this is not the end of the giants. For the present, this is Sultan Kozan. 8 feet 3 is the tallest man at this moment. He's not that old, is in fact 1 year older than Sun Ming Ming. And here is with the, unfortunately he died some years ago, the smallest, the tiniest man in the world. So the biggest one, or the tallest one, with the shortest one. And you can tell that this is really as big as Big Ben, almost, from this perspective. But I would like to take you to a little trip to the giants of the latter days, the modern days, okay? And our story, we will have, if you even make your research, you'll find a lot of giant people. Look, for instance, this man holding this nurse. It's a giant. It's a giant. Another man walking around with his wife is almost double the wife. And we had several giants throughout history. I'm going to introduce you to some of them. Andrei Rosimov was a French fighter. He was 7 feet 4. And 7 feet 4 of muscle, very strong. And he passed away in 93. But his opponents will fear when they will have to fight him, because he's like, first his long arms will make him reach you before you could reach them. Then this is not just size, is muscle. And you're like seeing or looking to a man that you cannot even reach his face. But this is not the most impressive that we can find. I can show you another one. Gabriel Monjane is from Mozambique. And he passed away in 90. And he was 8 feet 1. I baptized a month ago a man that was 7 feet 1. So this is 1 foot taller. 1 foot taller. I mean, I was looking at this man like this before baptizing him. I cannot imagine 1 foot ahead of that or on top of that. But Gabriel is not the tallest that you can find. There are women also in these tallest Guinness records. Zheng Jinglian, 8.2. It's a woman also from China. I wondered, China, people are not that tall, but suddenly they produce those giants. It's amazing because we have several. That other man that was walking with his wife also, I think, is from that area. So you see, this woman perished in 82. You can see she almost doubles the size of those women. And you can notice that many of them, if you make the accounting, you will see that they die young. Because these are people that have some little problems that make them grow. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I know it's a children's story, but it has a lot of interesting factors in here. I'm going to introduce you to the tallest ones from recent history that we have registration of, so that we have record from. Okay, this is Leonid Stadnik. He is from Ukraine. And you see, he was born 1 year before I was born, in the 70s. And he died in 2014, so died very young. This man had a normal growth until age 13. But then he had to go to a brain surgery, and the doctors touched the pituitary gland that regulates growth. And since age 13, he started growing and growing and growing, and he reached to the 8.5 high. 8.5. One of the reasons these people grow this miserably is because they have problems with the gland that regulates their growth, and that's why the body, especially the heart, doesn't follow the growth of the heart doesn't follow the growth of the body, and so it's not able to pump. Like Andrei Rosimov, he died with a heart failure, and sometimes it's hard for these people. Then the muscles and the bones are also not proportionally grown, and they need help to walk. They cannot really stand by themselves because this is not a natural growth. But I can tell you 8.5 is quite impressive. Yeah, look at his hand. Consider, we look at all the other people around them, they look like tiny guys. It's not. That is not a tiny guy. It's just the other guy is really tall. In fact, this guy might be impressively tall if you consider how big the other one is. In U.S. in fact keeps the record for the two tallest men in recent history. One of them was here in Tennessee. In fact, we passed by the city where he was born, Hendersonville, and he died in a city nearby where we were living in our previous district, which was Gallatin. John Rogan, in fact, there's a mistake here, is 8.8. 8.8, if I'm not mistaken. And this man, you can tell how tall he is. He's quite seated. And the other guy is barely his size. And this man is not the biggest record we have in terms of size. The tallest one was Robert Wadlow. Robert Wadlow was 8.11. I think Rogan was 8.8 or 8.9, and Robert was 8.11. That's the tallest man in recent history. You can see here is at the hotel, a hard time to enter the elevator because he's really tall. And if you notice well at his age, you will see how young this man died, from 1918 to 1940. So it was early 20s, 22, that was his age when he died. Here we have some pictures with Robert with his car, his tiny car, with his family. You know when kids start trying to pass daddy, oh daddy, I'm taller than you. Well, Robert was quite taller than daddy. He was almost double size for daddy. You see here with the boy around his age or a little bit younger than him, you can see how tall this man is. There are some handy things about it, like if you want to set the clock, you don't need to, this is in the train station, he can set the clock without really, in fact, those guys will dump in basketball like this, not like this. It's how tall it is. You see here with regular people, here is in a radio interview, you see the man has got to climb to be able to be at his size. You see, this is a regular man. Those are regular people, and look how tiny they look beside him. Look at the length of those legs. But here you see again, he needs some support, a cane to help him go. And of course we have several pictures. Look at his size. I think his feet are 20, I don't want to be making any mistake. I don't remember. But if the other one was 22, imagine how big is the size of this one. That's handy when you need to change lamps. Even if it's a tall building, you can, even if the ceiling is very high, you can change the lamp without an effort. And what I want you to realize today is how can we put these tall people in perspective and understand what we are talking. We saw that all of them were needing help because this was not a proportional growth. You see, that's Robert's size, 8'11", consider an average man, 6 feet. Okay, so you see an average man and Robert, and look at the distance. I want you to remember a story about another giant that didn't have a pituitary gland problem, didn't grow with clumsy muscles or flimsy feet or having to support himself, but was full muscle, full strength, and challenging God's people. Just for you to have an idea, Goliath was equivalent to a 9.9, which is almost 2 feet taller than Robert. Okay? 9.9. And not 9.9 having to hang. Just for us to have in perspective how strong Goliath was at that size, I want us to see a little bit of the equipment he was carrying. His helmet, a brass helmet, was about 20 pounds. I want you to keep in perspective that the army and the firemen, they usually carry about 30 pounds on equipment. Goliath was carrying that, almost that, only on the head. 20 pounds of a helmet. I think I will be hanging like this. The sword, about another 20 pounds. The spear, 22 pounds, if you consider the spear and the head of the spear. Yes. The armor was estimated to be around 125 pounds. 125. He by himself, we could estimate, and I'm estimating really low, like 500 to 700, because these people, they grow proportionally, and the weight is not just, sometimes not just a proportion to what we have. It keeps growing because it requires. I want you to keep in mind how big this is. I want you also to realize why Israelites were fearing him. If you see, Saul was about the average man of today, because the Israelites were not that big. And Saul was, it says that he was from the shoulders up above the second tallest man in Israel. So everybody was around here on Saul, the tallest ones. Saul is this side and Goliath is this side. Saul had reasons to be concerned. Is almost half the size of Goliath. See these men coming with all these apparatus, with all these weapons, with all this heavy weight that another man has to carry, and challenging Saul. And of course Saul had this armor, but it was not that much of a big thing if you consider all that Goliath was carrying. This gives us a perspective how brave David was, because David was not even a full-formed man, so he was not as tall as Saul. He will probably be around here on Goliath. Goliath will really look at him, and you can understand why Goliath was despising him. But I want you to understand this. When kids have problems in school, they don't measure only how big they are, how tall they are. That's why they talk about how tall their parents are. David was not measuring how big this bullier in school or in battle was to him. He was not thinking, yeah, you're big. You are not that big. I tell you, wait until you see my father. You see, David is coming. He says, I'm not coming in my name. Look at my size. I'm not even your third. But I'm coming in the name of my father. You should not mess with my father. And you are calling names to my father. Oh, you're getting in trouble. Sometimes we face problems in life thinking about our size instead of thinking about the size of our father. Father, I want you to have a little bit of a perspective of what was in David's mind. This is Goliath. Saul. David could be probably around here, so you see like 1/3 of Goliath. But David knew about history. David knew that when God created mankind, Adam was this big. It's estimated that it was around 15 feet. proportional, strong. If you put in perspective, this is my head, this is my brain, from which we use around 10%, and I will be a little bit around here, so 4 times for Adam, 4 times my size. I have a friend that he says in the resurrection, Adam and Eve will look at us and say, oh, honey, look at them. They talk and everything. It's like, what a miniature. What is this? They will be very impressed with how much we have reduced in size. But I want you to realize, if our brain is this big, for a man 4 times our size, we'll have to have a brain this big, using 100% of it. Can you imagine this? This is something we can talk, but we can't even imagine. So David is thinking, wait a minute, Goliath, you think that's big? Just for you to know, the father of our generation, of humankind, was this big. It was almost 2/3 or 1/3 more than what you have. Now, if that's Adam, imagine how big was Adam's father. How big is God? This should give you the answer to how big is your father. Now, is it smart if you go to the battle and fight only with your size, with your strength and ability? Or is it smart to call your father? If I would have a father that is even bigger than Adam, that Adam was just a kid considering him, I will surely call him. How do you face your challenges in life? How do you face the things that life brings to you? In your strength or in the strength of your father? I would like to bring before you, this is my son yesterday said, son, Daddy, you should put in perspective. That's God, how big he is. So he said, we lose him in the universe. It says, in him we move and live. I thought that God was like a watchsmith that will just prepare a clock and let it work perfectly without failure, until I read in inspiration that it says that, no, God is not only putting everything in the universe to work, he keeps everything working. He is the strength, the power, the energy that is really in everything. And I'm talking about pantheism here. Don't get me wrong. And we read this morning, we have a little mistake there, is Deuteronomy 28:13. The Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. Why do we insist on being the tail? Why do we like to be the tail? Why do we prefer not to tell everybody about our diet, and then when New Age comes and said, oh, we are vegan or something like that, we say, oh, we knew this 100 years ago. You did? So why didn't you want to be the head and you prefer to be the tail? When they come with concepts on health, we say, oh yeah, we have somebody that had inspiration. We are very into the health message. Really? Why do we like to be the tail? But look at the detail. The Lord is saying, I will make you the head. You see, Daniel and his friends were 10 times wiser. It says, but that is if you what? Hearken my commandments. He told the Israelites, if you do the things I tell you, none of the diseases that reach to the Egyptians will reach to you. Can we make the transposing of the lesson? God is telling God's people today, if you follow my counsels on diet, my counsels on health, none of the problems that are reaching the worldly will come to you. If God's people is having the same problem that the worldly are having, is because we are not listening to what the Lord has given us as advices. You know that the Egyptians had the same kind of diseases of modern age. Cholesterol would be a problem, and many hypertension problems, and all these things that we are having because of the kind of diet they would have. I want you to realize that the Lord is calling us unto another level. He wants us to go higher. I would like to have you reflecting upon this. Head or tail? We use this expression when we want to flip the coin. And we think that being a head or the tail is just a flipping of the coin. If we are lucky, it may happen. But that's not what the Lord said. The Lord said, if you hearken, you will be the head, not the tail. Every time you flip the coin, head, 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 all the time. But it seems we don't like that. I want you to think about this. How likely for a slave to become the prime minister? How likely? 0, right? I mean, even for a foreigner to become a prime minister, it's a long journey. We saw everybody was puzzled when Arnold Schwarzenegger became the governor. Wow, look at how long this foreigner has progressed in his life, in his career. How likely for a slave mom to be paid to homeschool her condemned son? Not likely at all. Many women say, oh, you know, I'm a single mom, or I'm this, or I'm that. I cannot homeschool my kid. It depends probably on the strength of your faith. Many women say, oh, I don't have the ability to educate my kids. That's why, oh, we have to work, the two of us, to sustain the home. Look, if Jochebed could do it and be paid for it because she believed. Keep in mind, her son was supposed to be dead. She believed not only, no, my son is not going to die, this is God's son, but my son is going to get the best education. I'm not talking about the Egyptian one, I'm talking about the mom's one. You see, sometimes we think that the best education for our kids is the Egyptian one. But Jochebed realized everything is possible to those who believe. She said, no, my son will be homeschooled and I'll be paid for it. She didn't think about that, but the Lord granted her. But you might say, yeah, Pastor, yeah, it's nice because look, Joseph became the prime minister, but look, all of his generation, it was not all roses. The descendants of Joseph were enslaved again. Yes, but the Lord said, you'll be always the head if they were listening. They didn't listen, but still look at this miracle. The Lord says, and I ask you again, how likely it is for an entire nation, more than 1 million people, to be freed after 430 years in slavery? How likely it is for a nation to cross all the desert and to face the most powerful army of those days with no weapon? And the Lord is saying, okay, Israelites, we are going to cross all those nations and swipe them and take them and go to the promised land, and they will hear of you. And those people around, they were fearing them. They will, oh yeah, those are the ones that came out of Egypt with no weapons. And they have been swiping the land, sweeping everything. And the Lord said, okay, it will be good if the Israelites will have some weapons. You will have some battles to face. Let's find some weapons. Okay, the Egyptians come with the best weapons for you. Let's trap them in the Red Sea. And all the weapons, I'll bring them to the shore. Here's for your army. The Lord said, I want you to be the head and not the tail. You might say, Pastor, the world is not for dreamers. You know, this is not a dream world. Joseph was called what? The chief dreamer. Not only the dreamer, he was the chief dreamer. Here comes the chief dreamer. Oh, come on, man, you're flying too high. And Joseph was saying, I'm not flying because of myself. I'm flying because of my father. It's not, why shouldn't, I had a friend, he was not too tall in school, and everybody will play around, and he would say, well, my father was also short until a certain point, and then he snapped. I want you to understand, the chief dreamer was doing something that people say is bad, daydreaming, right? Oh, you're daydreaming. What do you prefer? Daydreaming or nightmares? Daydreaming is better than nightmares. Look, you can control what you dream with daydreaming. With nightmares, they come to you, you cannot control them. Some people would rather have nightmares than daydreaming. I was talking to this couple that I was visiting yesterday, and she was telling me, oh, I have terrible night dreams. I have terror nightmares. And the husband said, yeah, last night she woke up, smacked me 5 times, and she was dreaming about something. I said, well, this is a dangerous dreamer. But then a little bit after in the conversation, she said, oh, I watch all kind of movies. I said, oh, no wonder you have nightmares. Many of the nightmares we have in our lives, it's because of the things we feed ourselves. We don't hearken the Lord, and then we want to have beautiful dreams. Daydreaming is not just a matter of being floating on the clouds. It's a matter of trust. I want you to realize, how bold can you dream? I don't want this to be a theoretical preaching. Camden, how bold can you dream? What is limiting us as a church? Maybe is our dream. Look, how bold can you dream to ask the sun to stop? Is this a lot of illusion? Is this daydreaming? God, if you could please stop the sun, we could win this battle. Why didn't God say, you guys, Joshua, stop being ridiculous? Where do you find this idea of stopping the sun? But God said, good idea. I'm going to do that. Stop the sun and you will win. I want you to be the head and not the tail. How bold can you dream to ask the sea waters to part? Moses is saying, God, look, the Egyptians are coming. We are trapped. We took us out of Egypt and now here. It said, Moses, why are you whining at me? Didn't I tell you I want you to be the head? Tell the people to move on. I'll open the seas. How bold can you be to say, God, if it's you, ask me to walk on waters? Why didn't Jesus say, Peter, stop being ridiculous, get back to the boat? Did anyone on that boat walk on waters? No, because why? Nobody dared. Nobody dared to ask. Nobody dreamed about it. How bold are you when you ask? How high do you expect from God? Head or tail? How big can you dream? Say, how bold can you ask, but how big can you dream? I want you to realize, what does God mean when He said, I want you to be the head? And why do we insist being the tail? Because we're not realizing, we're not hearkening. Look, Moses, the meekest man ever. Wait a minute. Is this the same guy that was punching the Egyptian to death? And now he's called the meekest man ever? And he's bold enough to write that about himself in the book. What about being humble? Moses is writing the Pentateuch and is writing there the meekest man ever. I can imagine God saying, Moses, you're going to write that. And Moses saying, Lord, really? It won't people? And God says, no, it's me telling you. I'm inspiring you. This is what I want you. I want everybody to see what I've made of you. From a proud guy that wanted to win in his own strength, I made you the meekest man ever. You don't want to even go and face things because you don't trust yourself any longer. Look, how big can you dream? Samson, the strongest man ever. It seems like when God bats on these things, He doesn't go light. He's the strongest, the meekest, the wisest man ever. When God strikes anything, you see, and God lets you take the credit. We said this. He said it's Moses' ark. Who created the ark? Is the Israelites' tabernacle? Is this the Israelites? It's God's. God's idea. God is sharing. He says, I want you to be the head and not the tail. What do you want to be? That's what you want to be? Do you believe it's possible to be the head? Or you are happy and content on keeping being the tail? And say, okay, that's fair enough for us. You see, many times the Lord reminds me where I came from. I receive myself in how He told David, David, you were just a shepherd there behind the sheep. You were nothing even in your family. I took you out of there and made you a king. God many times reminds me the house where I grew up. For me to take a shower, I'll have to go miles up the hill for a public place. My house survived the earthquake There was no conditions where I grew up. I was ashamed to bring friends to my house. But the Lord said, son, I want you to be the head and not the tail. Many times I would cry on my knees and say, Lord, why do I have to live in this house? Until one day the Lord answered me. He says, you know why I don't give you a better house? Because you're not taking care of the house I gave you. You're so discouraged that this is a bad house that you don't even care about it. And I say, I got the message. When I decided to improve my house, the Lord took me out of there. He said, okay, you got the lesson. Let's go for the next level. When I look back on who I was, the life I lived, and what the Lord has made out of me, I say, look, there's no way I can brag about the things that I achieved, because the best things that I achieved was not I. And the biggest thing that I didn't achieve was I trying. Are you with me? The wisest, the strongest, the meekest, not because of you, because of God. I want to tell you something. The Lord breadcrumbs are better than Satan's biggest loaf of bread. That woman, she knew what she was asking. The Lord said, hey, it's not good to give to the dogs. She said, I know I'm just a dog. But if you would give me some breadcrumbs, I will be so happy. Because your breadcrumbs are better than whatever I could achieve. Your breadcrumbs are the head, while Satan's loaf of bread is just the tail. How big do you dream? How high do you expect God to take you? I want you to ask yourself, am I still dreaming? You know, we must keep dreaming. There was a man that once had a speech. He said, I have a dream. Martin, are you out of your mind? Look, you guys are just a bunch of slaves. You have no way to go in this society. And now you have a dream for equality. And one day my 4 little children, well, it was an impossible dream that what? Became true. Imagine if Martin was there on the day that Obama became the president. Probably people around will be saying, Martin, this is a ridiculous dream. But he still dreamed. And he was a man of faith. You see, sometimes dreamers don't live to see their dreams come true. Sometimes dreamers, they die trying. Abraham never saw his generation inheriting the promised land, but he believed. He died trying. Martin Luther didn't see the results of his dream, but he believed and died trying. Let me tell you, some people fear to die trying. They say, oh, how can you dream an entire life and then at the end not make it? Moses dreamed to take the people to the promised land. He died trying, and God said, wait a minute. Yes, you're dying trying, but I want you to see that happen. I have it on video. I'm going to show you from up there. The real thing. You see, I want to tell you this. It's better to die dreaming than to live fearing. I'd rather keep dreaming and die and never achieve my dream than to fear to try something. Are you still dreaming? Do you still believe the Lord wants to make you the head? Or are you so content with Satan making you the tail that you think that's the end of it? I again said this is not a rhetorical preaching. I'm talking to you, Camden. I want you to think about this. What is your plan? Look, I want you to realize what the Bible says. It says, there is what? No fear in love. Because what? Perfect love casteth out fear. If I'm still fearing, I'm not having perfect love. Once I had a relationship that was not going well, and I decided to end. And this girl said, you know, what I fear is that you're ending this relationship because you don't feel that you have strong feelings enough for me. But I fear that when you break up, and we go each one our ways, then you realize that you really loved me, and now I'm gone. And that made sense. And I told her, you know what? You know why I don't fear? Because I'd rather suffer for you at the distance than being with you with no feelings. Sometimes we are like these kids that the mom said, son, if you play with this toy, you may break it. Let's keep it up. Who cares about the toy that can be broken if you cannot play with it? What I'm trying to say is sometimes we get closed in fear because fear has torment, and it's not made of perfect love. We need to be bold. We need to not fear, because the Lord didn't say if you move forward you will not suffer. The Lord said even if you suffer, I'll be there with you. If you go to the furnace, I'll be there with you. If you go to trials, I'll be there with you. If they bury you alive, if they burn you alive, I'll be so there with you that you will be singing. Is that the head or the tail? I want you to realize, dreamers don't think they own the world. Oh yeah, we own the world. No, dreamers, real dreamers, spiritual dreamers, believers, they know they don't own the world. They know they are nothing. David knew where he came from. He knew he was nothing. But dreamers know their father is the owner. That's why they don't fear. They know who is their father, who their father is. It's not about how good you are, but how good, I'm sorry, there's a little mistake there, how good God is. I want to say something to you. When we stop dreaming, when we stop believing, when we stop aiming higher, we are not really being just shrinked. We are dishonoring God. Because we are saying, God, I'm not sure how big of a father you are. I want you to realize this and keep this in perspective. I share with you some of this. I'm just going to repeat it. This is the planet where you live. Oh, we look like big guys in school. Look, Venus, oh, he's smaller. Mars, even smaller. Mercury, Pluto, I'm not even going to talk about it because some people say it's not even a planet anymore, pray. Of course, we look like the big guys. If we look at ourselves, if David would look at himself comparing to the sheep, it was like, yeah. But as soon as he enters the army, he says, As soon as we enter the real dimensions, we see, wait, we are not as big as we thought. Yes, Earth is bigger than Pluto, but look at Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Those guys are real big guys in school. This gives you a perspective. But the Lord is not asking you to move forward on your size and how big you are, because even Jupiter, if you put that in perspective, here's Jupiter and here's the sun. You might say, whoa, Jupiter, you thought you were big. Look at the sun. And the sun cannot brag about it, because if you put the sun in perspective, that's the little dot there. Here's other stars, Betelgeuse, Antares, big stars, Canis Majoris. And even if you think of the biggest star we know, just for you to have a perspective, that's the sun there. And you remember that the earth, considering the sun, was just a dot like that. That's how small you are nothing. So why is the Lord caring so much about you? Because it's not about you. It's about Him. He's not going to make you the head because of how big you are, how good you are, how smart you are, but about Him, because of Him. Because He wants people to realize that it's all about Him. So even the smallest you are, the better. Because the strength is what? In weakness. Made bigger in weakness. I want us to realize this. How big is God? Oh, you might say, Pastor, this is sounding like a self-aid preaching. Then you say, believe in yourself. See how good you can go, how high you can go. No. There's nothing of self-aid. Self-aid is satanic. He's trying to show you the strength that is in you if you believe. There's nothing there if you believe. It's not because you believe. It's not what you believe, but who you believe. I want you to realize that the point is how big is your God. The problem is not that we have a big God. We know that. The problem of how big is your God. The God you believe in, how big is He? Because I'm going to show you now, this is where we have our problem. I call it the Chihuahua syndrome. Have you seen Chihuahuas? I was visiting this couple yesterday. They have 5 Chihuahuas. 5 Chihuahuas. Can you imagine that? Why would you get 5 Chihuahuas at home? 1 Chihuahua would be enough. Our neighbor has a Chihuahua. One that's got even polished nails and everything. It's like a Chihuahua. Chihuahuas, they have a problem. They don't know how big they are. You know, you see Chihuahuas barking at the Doberman, like if they were so big. And then they think they are really effective because the other dogs despise them. They say, "Oh, what is this? Where do you put the batteries?" It's like, and then they think, "Yeah, you got what you deserve. You don't mess with me." Because the other dog is just turning around and going. He's even not. We are sometimes like Chihuahuas. We are not aware of where we came from, who we are, and why the Lord is willing to make us the tail. Either we look at our size or we don't even realize how big we are or small we are. I want you to think today, because this is a serious problem that I'm bringing to Camden. There's a problem when you pray according to what you see. Sometimes you're praying for your children that you want to come back to the Lord, and you get discouraged because you don't see any chance. And you stop praying, and this is exactly what Satan wants. Because if you stop praying, it won't happen. Sometimes we want something, you start praying, and as we move by sight, we don't see any evidence of change, we stop praying. This is a big mistake, because we have a Chihuahua problem. I want us to realize the kind of God you serve defines the kind of homage you pay to God. So if you're not really seeing God as that much of a big thing, you are dishonoring Him by not believing in the things that He can do for you. Did you get what I say here? I want you to understand the root of the words we use. Worship, praise. We say we come to church to worship the Lord, to praise the Lord. Do you know where those words come from? Worship comes from worthship. How worthy is what you care for. Praise comes from prize. Those are the origins of the words in the roots of German and ancient English. How worth is the Lord you worship? How much you praise or prize the Lord you praise? How big is God for you? You see, we will soon see how big is God for us. The kind of God you serve defines the kind of miracles and blessings you should expect for. Look, this is serious. If you're not believing in great things for your life, for your church in Camden, maybe you're not believing in a great God. You're dishonoring God by squeezing God, reducing God to the size of your belief. I want you to realize this is very serious. Sometimes we shrink God to our size. Look, we see the difference between what God wants to do and what we want to expect. I want you to go with me for a little trip. Look, God was willing to resurrect the brother of Martha and Mary, and they were just expecting for Him to heal him. God said, wait, I have something bigger. Why should I heal him when I can show you more power? You see, God wanted to take the people in 40 days to the promised land. They said, no, that's too fast. We cannot do that. Let's take 40 years. Because they didn't see, I wonder why also, right? They didn't see the size of the miracle. You see, God said to the Israelites when He took them and they got there and saw the giants, God says, let's defeat them right now. They said, no, let's wait for David. 400 years from now. Or more. Or even more. I want us to understand God wants to give us more, but we fear to open our hands because we fear to lose what we have. And the Lord cannot give us more because of that. The key is not how possible it is, but how powerful your projected God is. The point is not that we don't know that God is big, but we don't know our God is big. We have shortened our God, and we ask miracles according to the faith we have, the perspective we have. I want you to realize how big is your God. You know, the greater respect, the greater the honor. A Muslim won't even dare come into the temple with his shoes on. In the Middle Ages, the feet are the worst part of your body. That's why Mary Magdalene was using the best of her, the crown of the woman, the hair, to wash the worst of Jesus, saying, the best of me is not even as worthy as the worst of you. That's why she used that perfume, that 2 drops will make smell all around the place, and she used an entire bottle. You see, how do you come before the Lord? The way we come before the Lord is clearly showing we don't praise that much of a big God. He's a guy that you can sit and chat and do whatever in church because he's okay, he takes it. A Muslim won't do that because his God is big. In fact, in the Muslim religion, God is about power. They see him as so powerful. You see, some people say, oh, we have come a long way. The problem is that in the past, in the Catholic time, we had cathedrals, and people will look at those big cathedrals and feel reverence. It was so big, they will speak, oh, 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 it will echo. It was so big. And now we came, our temples, we can be cool before the Lord because we don't have that fear. Wait a minute. Is this true? What about this then? People that don't even have a church, but they still have reverence. People that don't even have a church, they go under a tree, but they still know how big is the God they serve. You see, it's not about the size you project. I want you to realize it's not about the temple. In fact, it's the other way around. The greater the God, the greater the reverence. The greater the reverence, the greater the temple, no matter where you are. I want you to realize this, and I'm coming to the point of my message this morning, which I don't believe is mine, in fact. Moses was in the same place where he used to feed the sheep, but he knew that it was a holy ground. He wouldn't dare because he knew how big God was. Jacob was sleeping on a stone. And as soon as he woke up, he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. He called that place Bethel. Bethel, house of the Lord. He was just in the wild. But he was aware of how big God was, even in the wild, even with the sheep, even in the burning bush. We lost sense of how big God is. We lost sense of how big our Father is. We lost sense of where we came from. I want you to realize this. Man used to look at God as transcendental. It was something beyond we couldn't grasp. Then Lord said, I don't want you to fear me that much. I want you to respect me, yes, but I want you to understand that I'm mighty and powerful, but man misunderstood the message. So from mighty and powerful, they started seeing God as a close friend, which was good, and then they started seeing God as a common pal, and we came to the point that God is now in me. I am God. You see? I go to the church where I feel good, when I think is the right time. I worship the Lord the way I like. I think I shared with you this nice sentence. This man came to the preacher at the end of the service and say, Pastor, I didn't like the worship today. And the pastor said, it's okay, we were not worshiping you. We think Christianity is about us. We think faithfulness is about us. If God is faithful to us, then we worship Him. You see, we think reverence is not our problem. We think the way we treat God is not our problem. We came a long way. We lost sense of who we are. We lost sense of how small we are. We lost sense of all the distance between us and God. You might say, Pastor, why are you bringing all this? Because we expect great things from a tiny God. We expect great miracles from a God we despise. We want the Lord to bless our church and make it grow and make it the head, if we still believe that. But we treat God like if He was nothing. Like if it was the last in our list. We put first all of our energies for our work. If we have then some energies left, we come to the Lord. But then we want the Lord to give us the greatest miracles. What if the Lord will give you the same treatment you give Him? When you come to Him with some problem or request, the Lord will tell you, wait a minute, I have a lot of things to take care of before you. You see, we have everything first in our life, but we want God to keep us first. We give the best of our time for our activities, for our projects, for our dreams, the best of our energy, but then we want great miracles. If we are with financial problems, we want the Lord to help us, but we don't prioritize Him. I have somebody in the district, I'm not going to mention which church. This person is always with problems, always coming and asking for help. But whenever the church is needing, that person is not there. And I told this person once, it's not in Camden, just for you to be relaxed. I told that person once, I might say the same thing on the other churches because we might have similar examples, but no, it's not. I told this person once, I said, the person would say, why is God taking me to so many trials? I say, God, why are you taking yourself to so many trials? I say, what do you mean? You say, look, I don't see you in prayer meeting. I barely see you in church service. But you expect great miracles from the Lord. You prioritize everything. Oh, but I'm striving. I have a lot of problems. Yes, and you will keep having them. Because if you go try to solve your problems, you will keep having problems. Satan will keep you busy. You have to come to the source. You expect to solve your problems, then come to God. You see, we want God to bless our homes and families financially, materially, with all the things, but we don't give priority. When we need offices in church, I don't have time for that. When we take our office, we don't take it professionally because we are busy with other things in our lives. Because we think if I don't take care of my business and I get so immersed in church, I will not get the money I need I'm already very suffering with the things I need. Once I was preaching in a church in Brazil, and they had the board proudly saying how much they were giving in donations. And I'm about to preach and look at the board and I get shocked. And I say, what is this? I said, this is our donation boards for last month. I said, and you post it on the wall? They said, what do you mean? I said, that's not even $1 for head. Per head. You say, oh, Pastor, this is not America? You think this is America that you guys have a lot of money to give? We don't have money to give. That's a lot. I said, look, you have it all messed up. It's not that Americans have and so they give a lot. It's that American gives a lot and that's why they have. And you don't have because you give a little. And I said, look, you see, $1, it wasn't 1 real, but I was saying $1 there, you might spend 20 to rent movies on Saturday night. But you don't have $1 for the Lord because it's the last. First you see what you need for and then you bring for the last. In our time, first we put the time in all the things we need for and then we bring the rest for the Lord. In our professional work, we put all that we need because we are trying to save our skin. The Bible says he that tries to save his skin will what? Lose it. That's why we don't have. You will only be put as the head if you put the Lord as the head. If you put the Lord as the tail, that's where you'll be. Wherever you put God, that's where you'll be. If you leave the Lord for last, that's where you'll be. It takes faith. You have to believe that I'm going to be faithful and trust. The woman that had only 2 coins, she could have said something, oh yeah, it's only 2 coins. She could even said, okay, Lord, you take 1. I'm being faithful. I'll take 1 for my life. She said, no. I'm going to invest the best in where the money comes from. Here, Lord, it's all for you. You know what I need. If you treat the Lord as the head, He will make you the head. If you treat the Lord as the tail, that's where you'll be. The Lord said, those who honor me, I will honor. If you give the Lord the last of your resources, it bounces back to you. Miserable resources. If you give the Lord the last of your time, you will never have time. It says there's time for everything under heaven. If you don't put your time under heaven, there's time for nothing. This is why I'm saying we want to be big, but just dreaming like daydreamers. We have to dream like faithful people. I have a challenge for Camden today, the Bethel challenge. We don't have to be who we are. We don't have to be who we came from. We have to be who we are going to. You see, they say you become like what you worship. If you worship work, you'll become busy and with no time. If you worship God, you'll become the head. We are restrained by where we came from, by what our family fought for and what we are striving for in our lives. And instead of coming to our Father, we want to go on our size. I want to invite you. They say in the big circles, if you want to be, act like if you are. Some people play rich because they want to be rich. If you want to be head, why don't you start dealing with the Lord like the head? Why don't you say, you know, God, I might not have time for my work, but I'll have time for your work. You know, God, I might not have money for my family, but I will have money for your family. I will take care of your business. And don't think I'm asking you appeals for you to give more money. It's not about what I need. God doesn't need your money. It's not about what He needs. It's about what you're willing to give. I want to challenge you, Camden, to treat the Lord as the head. And He says, try me and see if I will not open the windows of heaven. Don't try Him selfishly. Try Him faithfully, believing, seeing how big it is. Don't worship God because you are something back. Worship God because He's really big. He's great. It's awesome. It's amazing when you look at all He has done, all the wonders, all He can do. Even if it's like Job, Lord, even if you kill me, I can't help but worshiping you. We haven't received a lot. And the reason why we don't receive more is because we don't open our hands. Because we fear to lose what we have. I want to challenge you to the Bethel challenge. The only impossible dream for God is the one we quit believing in. Camden, how big do you want to be? How great do you want to be? Your family, not only the church family, your personal families. How big do you want it to be? Jesus always said, according to your faith, it shall be done to you. Maybe the reason why we're not having more is because we are not believing more. The size of our God determines the size of our miracles. I want to challenge you. As we pass the revival, I want to challenge you to recommit the best of you to the Lord, and He will give you the best of what He has in store for you. That the Lord may help us in this journey, that we may see this is no game, that we may look back in history and realize the Lord is still inviting us to step forward by faith on being the head and not the tail. May the Lord bless you today.
I pray that as we listen to this sermon, we will take it to heart. It's a privilege to be the head and then settle for the tail. It's a privilege for God to open to us heaven, and we settle to go to a place that He never invited us to go. So I pray that as you reflect on the sermon that Pastor presented today, not to think like the children of Israel and to call ourselves grasshoppers. We're children of God. We're not grasshoppers. And we can overcome the giant. It's a good land. Let us endeavor to tell others so that they can come to the good land. And as we move up higher and press on, let's sing number 625, Higher Ground.
Sing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying, Lord, let my feet on higher ground, Lord, lift me my faith on higher plane that I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay where storms are high and fear dismay. Though some may dwell where these may bow, my prayer, my faith is higher ground. Lord, lift me my faith on higher plane that I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to live above the world, though Satan's wrong, let me around. For the joyful sound, the song of saints on higher ground. My faith on higher Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost pride and glimpse the gleam of glory bright. But still I pray till heaven I found. Lord, lift me to higher ground. Lord, lift me my faith on
The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord will let His face shine upon you. The Lord will give you peace. As you take a few minutes just to reflect on the sermon, and at the end of your reflection, you'll be ushered out. You can be seated.